much stuff floating around. I don't know. People trying to say they wasn't together.
Basically was trying to get into a threesome. What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to another exciting episode of Kay and Manny. I'm the one they call Manny. She's the lady of all K's. And we're going to talk about something that most people are afraid to talk about. But before we do that, let's get to our sponsors.
Yes, so today's show is sponsored by Lady K Enterprises. We are a financial service firm, which we can help you with everything from helping you start in your business, registering your business, to actually growing a team, to actually getting your finances in order. So yes, Manny, today's show is dating outside your norm. I think sometimes we put restrictions on ourselves because it's what we're going by what society says and what we're used to and what we have seen. You know, so many factors play in. You know, Manny, do you agree with that?
I mean, it's more than it's one thing I like about this subject is there's so many layers to it.
Yeah.
And just like what you say, I mean, what society puts restriction on it, also it can be family, it can be your own intuition, it can also be your own thoughts, and it can be your own experiences.
Right.
So a lot of this stuff is not just one facet, it's a whole different gambit of things. And that's something we're going to try to talk about within 30 minutes, but we're going to make it work. So let's get started. All right. So restricting on love. What do you think about it? Or restrictions, more like.
Restriction. Okay, so let me bring up some restrictions that a lot of people are used to. So a lot of people say, "Oh, I would never date long distance." I'm gonna go thoroughly on why they would never date long distance. I would never date long distance. I wouldn't date outside my race. I wouldn't date outside my religion. And then I think this is the biggest one. The age range, which some people feel like, oh no, that person. I feel like there is some rules around that. It can make it work, but let's start with the long distance relationships. Do you know how many people I read or have a conversation with that said they will not have a long distance relationship because they need to be in the same town with the person because the person, you know, they need to know what they're doing.
Right. And I'm one of those people because I know I've been in a long distance relationship and it's tough. I mean, yes, you have the, versus, back in 2000, whenever versus now, you have FaceTime, now you have Google Duo, now you have ways to communicate, i.e. Zoom, i.e., things like that where you can, see that person face to face. However, some people rather have it in person versus, miles and miles away. Now, don't get me wrong. There are some people who prefer that because they think that person may be a little too clingy. And then there's some people who are like, well, I want that person next to me because there are moments where I just need that presence next to me. You know what I mean? But
right.
That's one aspect of it because a lot of people like myself would like to date somebody within kind of around the same area as they live in, but then when you deal with people out of state, hell, sometimes out of the country, it can be very difficult.
It can be. And everything that you just list is very valid. But I'm going to give some perspective on sometimes why you shouldn't hinder yourself to say, I won't date long distance. Because one, you never know. You never know that person that you're looking for can be long distance. And on top of that, that long distance can be temporary. But I did hear someone tell me before they wouldn't date long distance because they don't know if they can trust the person because the person is cheap. Let me tell you something, baby. If that is your mindset, let me tell you something right now. The person that's just in town with you, the person that you're laying next to every night, that person could be creeping right in front of your face. You don't even know it. The person on the other side of the world could just be committed to you because they're into you. So I just want to let people know it doesn't have nothing to do with cheating. If somebody wants to cheat, they would cheat. And at the same time, too, if you need to have a open line of communication of, hey, we know this is long distance. what parameters do we want to set up? Have those realistic conversations instead of in your head making up stories, making up scenarios, and then you're driving yourself crazy because you feel like you can't trust the person because of long distance. So I just want to say that if you have a trust issue and that's keeping you from long distance, then that's something that, as honestly, that's something that you gotta deal with self. Because it doesn't matter who you're with. That is an issue that you have to deal with self. Now, I understand you want that person to be next to you, that you gotta feel them. I totally understand that. But guess what too? There was plenty of people that I have known that, when they became serious, they was willing to relocate from one another, or they made the sacrifice to see one another because they live so far. And so this is some of the things that I just want to tell people just to keep in mind. And at the same time too, just because it did not, hear me, it did not work for somebody else does not mean it will not work for you. Those are the stipulations that people put on themselves. Oh, it didn't work. It didn't work for Ray Ray because Ray Ray got catfish. You and Ray Ray.
Okay, wait, stop. If you still getting catfish in 2022, I feel bad for you because there's
listen.
To find out if this person's for real or not. But
listen, people are getting catfish, and the scammers are getting very clever. You ever watch that show Catfish? It's real out there, and you know what's crazy? They always say that it's a lot of women that fall for it, but there are some men.
There are men who fall for it as well. I mean,
right, and
I'm not gonna say any names, but yeah, there are men who fall for the catfish.
Right, but here's the kicker. Here's the kicker. Here's the get around catfish, right? Because this happened to my cousin, right? So if you're speaking to someone on the phone all the time, right? But then they always say, "Oh, I can't go on camera with you because of where I live, the frequency, blah blah blah," and that's always an excuse. And this goes on for months. That's a scam, okay? Because with today's technology, that's bullshit. Okay, it straight is, okay? And I would tell you about my experience, right? At one point I was like, I don't know if I want to do long distance. That's just me to myself. But I actually did long distance a few times. It didn't really bother me, especially when you feel like you have a great connection with someone and it's beautiful. And you guys are on the same page. And just make sure, like I was telling you guys, if you missed the show, you got to go back and watch it. A few weeks ago, we did a show called Vetting, and it's just all about you vetting that person correctly. You just watch and you listen and you learn, and that's what it's all about. Watch and learn. Don't create stories in your head that you think is. No, watch for what it is. You know what I'm trying to say? So
absolutely.
The next one, dating outside your race. Now I'm gonna say this, right? I'm a Black woman who love her Black men, and I'm attracted to my Black men. And if that's how you feel, I get it. But if you're saying I'm the type of person that I want to explore because I feel my man is outside my race, there's nothing wrong with that. If you're the first person in your family to date out your race, it's okay. Manny, what you got to say?
Again, we're going to try to keep this show under 30 minutes here. But
right.
Before I say this, let me preface something. To all the people who are dating outside of their race or married to somebody outside of their race or prefer people who are outside of their race, good for you. That's awesome. Do for it. As for me, in my mind, in my soul, in my body, I prefer a Black woman. I'm going to call it what it is. I prefer a Black woman, and the reason why I prefer a Black woman because only a Black woman or a woman of color can really understand what Black men, go through on a regular basis, on top of just stepping outside and trying to survive. Never mind dealing with the ridicule. Never mind dealing with, family. We're trying to survive out here, and then here we are. We're coming back home, and then you can't relate to what we go through on a regular basis. And let me also bring this, ladies, and I mean Black women. If you see somebody or you see somebody of color and they're dating outside of their race, let's say they're dating somebody from the caucus community, They're out there, you know, having a lovely time. They eat sandwiches with mayonnaise and shit. Don't give them any heat, because one time, and this is when I was in high school, and this was back in 1990 something. Um, I went to a movies, and actually I saw the movie American Beauty. I went with a white girl, and we were out in the concession stand getting snacks. Now, to my left, there were four black women cutting their eyes at me, as my dad would say. In other words, they were staring at me hard. They could pretty much burn a hole in my system. Whereas they were looking at me saying, I know damn well you ain't taking this bitch out here, and you got us four out here, and we're out here singling shit, and you with this milk cow, as my grandmother would say. So it's just one of those moments where I'm just kind of like, okay, what do I do in this situation? Do I ignore it, or do I confront it, or do I say, hi, how are you? No, just ignore it. Because there's no good going to come out of this, because first and foremost, we're out in public. Second and most, we're in a movie theater where there's a lot of people out here, and this is before camera phones too. And third most, and this is the very important part, as you can't win in this argument. You cannot win. There is just certain arguments that you are just born to lose in. And in that case, I was born to lose in it. So I just say, you know what? Live to see another day. And I'm not going to say, and this is not to say to back down. This is not to say to punk out. This is not, no. There are just certain fights you should take up with certain races, and there's certain fights you shouldn't take up with your own, because there's no winning out of that with both parties.
And you're absolutely right. But here's my thing too. Who you choose to love is actually none of my business. Now, this is where I'm sorry. I didn't mean to stop you. There's a song out there, and I need everybody to listen to it. This is my free plug for the day. There's a song out there by October London called Colorblind. Check it out. It can really give a perspective of somebody dating outside of their race. But it's not only is a great song, it has a good message to it. And on top of that, it samples Marvin Gaye. So I'm always a fan of that. But yeah, check out that song if you have the time, or when you have the time. But go ahead, Kay. Okay. So that's cool. So like I said, dating outside your race is really nobody else's business. You know, you made a decision to do that on your own. So I am going to talk about some pros and cons dating outside your race. When you do decide to date out your race, one pro that I do see is that you will get to see other people culture and how they do so. So it can be more of a learning standpoint of how people do things, because, you know, in your culture, you know, you're used to certain things in certain ways. And you might say, hey, I'm okay with going out to see how they do things. And I actually, before, I think I told you this, Manny, I dated this Indian guy, right? You know, he was really cool. But the things that he used to tell me, because he lived here in the States, but the things he would tell me about his culture and back home and how things were, it was very educational for me. And I thought, like, you know, I would never, you know, date outside my race. But again, it was to say, you know what, just go with the experience, Clem. It's not like you're going to marry him. And I think that's a lot of people, what they do. Like, they look at the person and they'll be like, oh, you know, I wouldn't see them as my husband and my wife. Stop thinking like that. Just go out there and just have fun and explore and just have an open mind. So I see why some people will do that. The only issue that I have when people date outside their race is when they specifically label their race, oh, I don't date my race because they do this or they're like this. I don't like that. Stop doing that, because we're all individual. Yes, I understand the whole culture, but everyone is still different. And at the same time, too, you gotta understand people evolve. So you might know that person, like you said, Manny, in 1999, but now in 2022, it can be a totally different aspect of and a whole different mindset. So that's my only problem that I have when people say they don't date within their race because X, Y, and Z. And I want to give a clear example, and I'm pretty sure everybody knows, like, I really cannot stand it when Black men say, I don't date Black women because blah, blah, blah.
Wait. That's a whole nother show.
That's a whole nother show.
I can go on for days with that, but that's a whole nother show.
Right. Don't do that, because
but don't do that.
Don't do that. Because we love you, black men. First of all, I love my black men. I do. I have nothing against the people outside of my race, but I do love my black men. And I talk about you guys all the time, and I want to give you guys your props because you are some intelligent, smart creatures. So it's like, don't do that to your black woman because we care about you. So even if you choose to date outside your race, I'm still will support you as long as you don't try to make it seem like, the other race is better than our race, or even try to put us down or belittle us because of what's in your mind.
Correct.
Feel me?
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you a question, Manny, right?
Sure. All right.
You shared that story when you was in the movie theater and you was in high school, you said, right?
Correct.
Do you feel like at that moment like, oh my gosh, like, what am I doing here with her?
At the time, no, I didn't feel that way because because when you're, I don't know, I want to say I was 17, maybe. Mm-hmm. When you're 17 years old, you don't have a clear vision on how the world is or how the world works. Now,
to a degree.
To a degree.
Right.
To a degree. But again, 17, much older. I just turned 40. So it's just one of those things, whereas you didn't really experience the world as a whole. You only experience the world within a confined area, right, i.e. your neighborhood or your city or what have you. Whereas fast forward, 20 plus years later, you've seen the world, you've seen different people, you've seen how everything is kind of either working with you or working against you.
Right.
Now that I think about it, I don't regret going on that date with her. I really don't. But it made me realize at the time, because you have to understand, a lot of people don't know back then versus now. I mean, now it's all out in the open. It's all out in the open, and it's just like everywhere.
Right.
I mean, nobody's ashamed to it. But let's be real, and I want to kind of give some context to what I'm saying. Back in the 1990s, it was still taboo, whereas you date outside your race. And matter of fact, there are some states that outlawed it. Matter of fact, there are some states, I think the state of Mississippi at one point outlawed interracial dating, let alone interracial marriages. So it was just one of those moments where, you still had that mindset of, okay, you're dating outside your race. Because think about it. At that time, and some people still think about this now, you don't go outside of your race simply because you want to keep that race going, or you just know that you can find comfort within your own people versus someone else. Now, don't get me wrong. There are some people who think way past their own race, way past their own community. But then again, you're taking that risk of being ridiculed publicly and privately. And I do say this to everybody: if you date outside your race, go for it. And if that's what you want to do, go for it. However, you do understand that there are you're going to have to expect this, you're going to expect this, you're going to expect this, right. Everything. So don't just go in that thinking everything's going to be hunky-dory. No, you're going to have some speed bumps on the way and sometimes some roadblocks. So be prepared for that. But to answer your question, did I regret dating her at that moment? Absolutely not. And the reason why I don't regret it, because it made me realize what other people were thinking of, say, for instance, a black man dating a white woman, or we'll reverse it, a black woman dating a white man. Because think about it. Because at the time when you saw it, you're thinking, okay, if a black man's dating a white woman, they're thinking, now what is she doing? Now what is he doing with her? What has she got that I don't have? Right. And then throw that in a reverse card in there and be like, you see a black woman with a white man, and they're thinking, he don't know what to do with all that. He don't know what to do with all that. Nah, player. Somebody's credit is fucked up. I don't know who it is, but to some degree. I mean, and again, that's what people were thinking, right. And some people still think that. But yeah.
But you said a mouthful, but I just gotta go back and say, Mississippi is its own country. That's all I'm gonna say about Mississippi. But and then also too, you said something to the extent like, you know, reasons people might want to stay in a race. And one of the biggest things people might want to stay in a race is economics. And yes, the reproduction is important because, you know, you want to make sure that you're reproducing, you know, the same race that you are. And that's important to a lot of people. But like you said, but as you can see, the world is changing. And to me personally, I get it from the economic standpoint. I get it of having your race being duplicated. I totally get that aspect. But again, I just feel right now I'm just giving people free will just to not keep yourself in the box. And again, I'm just saying date. I ain't saying you gotta marry, but I'm saying just to date, just to go out, just to see what the culture is like. Cool. You know, I did that. I dated an Indian guy. I dated Spanish guy, but that's still like kind of like African American descendant. However, when I choose to marry, I choose to marry and I procreated with Black men. And that's just my preference. But all I'm saying is sometimes just step out the box just to understand people's cultures and how they do things. Now, ooh, it is the biggest one why people won't date outside their norm, and that is their religion.
Lady K.